The land of Canaan, bathed in the golden light of a bygone era, a time of tribal alliances and deep-seated faith. Yet beneath the veneer of peace, a darkness stirred. This was the time of judges, marked by spiritual fervor and moral decay. The Israelites, recently delivered from slavery in Egypt, found themselves at a crossroads. Would they embrace the covenant with God or succumb to idolatry and lawlessness? The book of Judges tells a tale of this struggle. It is within this tumultuous period that our story unfolds. A tragic episode that lays bare the fragility of peace and the devastating consequences of unchecked sin. In the heart of this turbulent era, a Levite from the Ephraimite highlands prepared for a journey. He was a man of God, tasked with the sacred duty of serving in the temple. But this journey was not one of religious obligation. It was a mission of the heart. He sought to reunite with his concubine, a woman who had left him and returned to her father's house in Bethlehem of Judah. The Levite, filled with a longing for reconciliation, travelled south. His heart ached for the woman he loved, and he carried with him the hope of restoring their fractured bond. He arrived in Bethlehem and was welcomed into the home of his concubine's father. Days turned into weeks as the Levite lingered, his desire to mend their relationship growing stronger with each passing day. Finally, after a month of reconciliation, the Levite prepared to return to his home in the Ephraimite hills, his concubine by his side. Little did he know that this fateful decision would lead them down a path of unimaginable horror. As twilight deepened, the Levite and his concubine approached the town of Gibeah. This town, in the territory of Benjamin, seemed to offer a safe haven. However, an eerie silence greeted them. The streets were deserted, the houses shuttered. Their calls for lodging echoed unanswered. An old man returning from the fields noticed their plight. He offered them the hospitality of his home. The old man welcomed them, offering food, water and rest. Little did they know, the true danger lay within the walls that now sheltered them. As the night deepened, a group of men from the town surrounded the old man's house. Their intentions were far from hospitable. Banging on the door, they demanded that the old man hand over the Levite, their words laced with a chilling blend of lust and violence. The old man, desperate to protect his guests, pleaded with the mob. He offered them his own daughter and the Levite's concubine, a horrifying compromise that revealed the depths of depravity to which the town had sunk. But the mob would not be deterred. In a desperate attempt to appease the mob and save the Levite, the concubine was thrust out into the darkness, a lamb sacrificed to wolves. Throughout the night, the men of Gibeah abused her relentlessly, their cruelty knowing no bounds. As the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, they left her broken and lifeless in the street, a chilling testament to their barbarity. The Levite, emerging from the old man's house, discovered the lifeless body of his concubine. Grief and rage surged within him as he beheld the horrific sight. The barbarity of the act, the utter disregard for human life, shook him to his core. In that moment, he resolved to seek justice, no matter the cost. He lifted the broken body of his concubine onto his donkey and began the long journey back to his home in Ephraim. But this was not a journey of mourning. It was a journey fueled by a burning desire for retribution. Upon reaching his home, the Levite performed an act both shocking and calculated. He dismembered his concubine's body, dividing it into 12 pieces. These gruesome parcels were then sent to each of the 12 tribes of Israel, a macabre message intended to shock the nation into action. The arrival of the Levites' gruesome message sent shockwaves through the tribes of Israel. The brutality of the act, the violation of hospitality, and the sanctity of life ignited a firestorm of outrage. From the northernmost reaches of Dan to the southernmost borders of Simeon, the tribes gathered as one, united in their condemnation of the atrocity committed in Gibeah. At Mizpah, a city steeped in history and religious significance, the tribes convened. The atmosphere was thick with tension as the elders, their faces etched with a mixture of grief and anger, listened to the Levite's tale. His words, heavy with sorrow and righteous fury, painted a vivid picture of the horror that had befallen his concubine. The tribes, bound by their covenant and their shared faith, demanded justice for this heinous crime. They called upon the tribe of Benjamin, within whose territory the atrocity had occurred, to hand over the perpetrators. The elders of Benjamin faced a grave dilemma. They could choose to uphold justice, to condemn the actions of their own and hand over the guilty parties to the assembled tribes. Or they could choose to protect their own, to shield the perpetrators of this horrific crime and risk plunging the nation into civil war. Tragically, they chose the latter. Blinded by tribal loyalty, the Benjaminites refused to surrender the guilty men. They rallied their forces, prepared to defend their kin, even if it meant taking up arms against their fellow Israelites. And so, a conflict that began with a single act of unimaginable cruelty escalated into a bloody civil war, pitting brother against brother in a horrific display of violence and bloodshed. The tribes of Israel, their numbers bolstered by their righteous anger, launched a fierce assault against the Benjaminites. The battles raged day after day, the land stained with the blood of countrymen. The war exacted a devastating toll on both sides. Countless lives were lost, families torn apart, and the land of Israel left scarred by the wounds of battle. The Benjaminites, their stubborn resistance eventually broken, were nearly annihilated. Their cities lay in ruins, their women and children either killed or scattered. The victorious tribes, their victory tinged with the bitter taste of ashes, were left to grapple with the devastating consequences of their actions. The near extinction of the tribe of Benjamin, once a source of pride and strength, left a gaping wound in the fabric of Israel. The elders, their hearts heavy with remorse and the weight of their decisions, gathered once again at Mizpah. The task before them was daunting: to rebuild their shattered nation, to find a way to heal the wounds of war, and to ensure the survival of their people. The question of Benjamin's fate hung heavy in the air. The elders, faced with the daunting task of rebuilding their shattered nation, devised a plan to ensure the survival of Benjamin. Their solution, though controversial, highlighted the complexities of justice and forgiveness in a time of great turmoil. They remembered that the inhabitants of Jabesh-Gilead, a city in the territory of Manasseh, had failed to heed the call to assemble against Benjamin. As punishment for their inaction, the elders decreed that every man, woman and child in Jabesh-Gilead should be put to death. Only the virgin daughters of the city were to be spared. These women, 400 in total, were to be given as wives to the surviving Benjaminite men. This act, though seemingly cruel, was intended to serve a dual purpose. It would ensure the continuation of the tribe of Benjamin, preventing its complete annihilation. The tragic tale of the Levite and his concubine serves as a chilling reminder of the fragility of peace. It is a story that transcends time and culture, resonating even in our modern world. Judges 19 to 21 offer lessons about justice, unity and compassion. The story highlights the dangers of tribalism and prioritizing one's own group. The Benjaminites chose to protect the guilty, leading to civil war. Their actions resulted in widespread death and destruction. This tale underscores the importance of accountability and the rule of law. The perpetrator should have been held responsible. The failure to deliver justice sowed discord among the tribes.